President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Wednesday commended Indian investors for pledging to invest nearly $14 billion to Nigeria, while the president also gave investors the assurance that all investing, financing and operating bottlenecks will all be broken. Well, tonight, our focus is on how to make Nigeria even more attractive for investment after the G20 summit. Babajide Ogunsanwo was the founder of Leadership by Data and, of course, Channels Television's data analyst is here to share an insight on Nigeria's investment landscape for eyes from these investors. Welcome, Babajide.
Good evening.
All right. When people hear investment, I mean, it has to be attractive, right? But the G20 summit has officially ended today. Investors have made promises to Nigeria. Has this been successful? Would you term it as a successful summit for President Tinubu?
Successful is a big word, Anne. Successful is a big word. But I'll let you decide if it is successful or not, because in this summit, what I can say is we've seen good news come out as the summit has ended, but we've also seen some bad news, and I'll explain that. But first, the good news. The president has gone into the summit, is left. We've heard pledges of $14 billion. For Nigeria at the moment, every penny matters. And so from that perspective, within 1 week, to have these new firms make commitments in terms of pledges and show willingness to come into Nigeria to invest, that sends good news, not just to Nigerians living in Nigeria. It also sends that spiral effect to other countries who had some cold feet with respect to investing in Nigeria. Now we have Indian investors who have said they'll come in to do some investment in power, steel, petrochemicals. Good news, $14 billion. But why do I talk about bad news? And, you know, my grandfather used to tell me that he who does not know where he's going can never be lost. With respect to this summit, yes, we've seen $14 billion pledges, but the right question is, what was the goal of the president? And that was never made public. So $14 billion, did we have a goal to get $20 billion? Was it $100 billion? Was it $200 billion? If we had a benchmark, then we will be able to determine if $14 billion and this investment summit was successful. But as at the moment, good news, $14 billion, but we never had that public goal that we were going into this summit with. Did we go into this summit to achieve $50 billion in investments? We didn't make that public. Did we want to achieve $100 billion? We didn't make that public. So the bad news is, it seems we went into this summit without any clear goal on how much we wanted to get back as investment. But the focus now is the $14 billion. So I would like us to take a look at what sectors are attracting these investors into Nigeria. And if we take a look at the sectors that seem to be attractive, we see potentially $8 billion coming from Indorama Petrochemical. They've said they see opportunities within the fertilizer space within Nigeria and the petrochemical space. We've seen Jindal Steel and Power also making commitments of $3 billion. They are looking at investments in manufacturing using steel. Another company, Skipper Sail, they are looking at investments in power, especially within the northern region. They are looking at an investment of up to $1.6 billion. And we also see potential investments even between the Indian government and Nigerian government in the security space. So in all, good news when we look at Nigeria needs every penny at the moment. Bad news in terms of what was the target going into the G20 summit.
But Babajide, I mean, most of these investment pledges have been made from Indian investors. Is this a surprise?
Big surprise, Anne. Big surprise. Big surprise, especially if you look at where we're coming from in the last 5 years when it comes to investments. What I mean in specific terms is which countries in Asia historically have shown a large appetite for investing in Nigeria. And if we take a look at the countries within Asia, just an Asian focus to find out where our investment friends in Asia, the number one country, the United Arab Emirates. We'll probably get to that later to explain why the president has also flown to the UAE. In front of us are the top 5 countries in Asia that have invested in Nigeria in the last 5 years. Number one, the United Arab Emirates. In the last 5 years, $3.2 billion have come in from the UAE. Number 2, Singapore, another $3.2 billion from Singapore. Hong Kong, number 3, $642 million. And then we have Cyprus and China in 4th and 5th position. So looking at history, India hasn't shown much interest in investments in Nigeria, looking at where most of our investments come in. But now we've seen a better handshake between the president and us, and hopefully it seems that the days ahead will surely be brighter.
But how significant is India's interest or pledge in tackling security issues in the country?
And that was a big surprise, $1 billion and into assisting Nigeria to improve its local production of weapons. And even the Chief of Defense Staff, if you take a look at his positive comments, what we've seen is since the Chief of Defense Staff and the other service chiefs have been sworn in, one thing they've really been talking about is trying to attract more investments into Nigeria being self-sufficient in local production. So his goal is that before the end of this decade, Nigeria will significantly be self-sufficient in producing light weapons and some ammunition rather than having to rely on external partners to import this weapon. So it's a good day for the Nigerian Armed Forces, it's a good day for the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, who has also made it clear that Nigeria cannot, like every other country, cannot be relying on just itself. And so this partnership will allow the Nigerian Armed Forces to achieve its security goals of peace and order. So it's a big plus.
Yes, I also agree with you. I mean, the issue of security cannot be overemphasized. But the president is now in the United Arab Emirates. What are the expectations?
So now that's big. There have been a lot of discussions on visas. There have been a lot of discussion. But my advice to the president is we shouldn't beg. Nigeria is important to every nation in the world. And Nigeria is not only the biggest economy in Africa, we are the 30th largest in the world. And so going to the UAE, it's a negotiation. It's about win-win. We mustn't go to beg. Every country in the world needs Nigeria, and Nigeria has a lot to offer. We can look at it from even our economic potentials. If we take a look at what we refer to as Nigeria's zone of economic potential, and if we take a look at that, we're talking about the president keeping his eyes on Nigeria's 10 largest economic sectors based on the report from the Bureau of Statistics, and also keeping another eye on the bottom 10 smallest sectors. Within these 20 sectors lies a lot of potential. And again, I repeat, Nigeria's top 10 largest economic sectors still offers investors, especially in the UAE, a lot of economic partnership. And if we also take a look at the growth potential sectors, which is the bottom 10 smallest sectors, a lot of potential lies. So we now have 20 sectors that investors can look at, zone of economic potential. President has landed in UAE. And what we expect again is negotiations that will lead to a win-win. The president must have his goal. Don't forget what I started with, what my grandfather told me. If you do not know where you're going, you can never be lost. We hope that the president will come back being more found than lost.
Oh, that's our prayer. Thank you, Babajide Ogunsanwo, founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's analyst, for your important contribution on the News at 10.
The pleasure is all mine now.